Imagine a judge who's supposed to uphold the law, but instead he's secretly profiting from bending it. Now picture that same judge being publicly exposed in a courtroom, with the weight of his corruption crashing down on him. It sounds like something out of a thriller, but this is exactly what happened when Pam Bondi took on one of Florida's most powerful and corrupt judges. What happened next will leave you stunned. Minutes after the confrontation, he was led away in handcuffs, his entire career shattered. How did it all go down? Stay tuned, because this is a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice. Before we dive into the shocking details, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe our channel. It was a day like no other in the courtroom. The tension in the air was palpable, and the crowd of lawyers, officials, and spectators all seemed to hold their breath, anticipating what was about to unfold. Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, stood at the front of the courtroom with a steely resolve. Today was the day she was going to do something no one expected: expose a corrupt judge, a man who had been hiding behind his robe for far too long. Pam had always been known for her firm stance on justice and her willingness to take on anyone, no matter how powerful they were. Her reputation for fighting corruption had earned her respect across the state of Florida, and today she was about to prove why she had earned that reputation. As she prepared to confront a man who had long been trusted with the power to shape lives, the audience knew that the stakes were high. This was more than just a courtroom drama, it was a battle for justice. The judge in question, a seasoned official with decades of experience, had been at the center of several whispers. Allegations had circled around him for years, and people in the legal community had long suspected that something wasn't right. But no one had the courage to challenge him. That is, until Pam Bondi walked into the courtroom. This wasn't just another routine case. This was a showdown between a powerful figure in the legal system and the one woman who wasn't afraid to take him down. For years, Judge Raymond Langford had sat on the bench, handing down rulings that impacted countless lives. However, his decisions had become increasingly questionable, and rumors of corruption had begun to spread. Allegations had surfaced that Langford had been taking bribes to rule in favor of certain high-profile individuals. It was also rumored that he had used his position to influence cases for his own personal gain. The whispers grew louder, but no one could prove anything, until now. The community was in an uproar. People had begun to question the integrity of the legal system. How many innocent lives had been affected by Langford's biased rulings? How many criminals had walked free due to his corrupt influence? The people had trusted him to uphold the law, but now they felt betrayed. At the heart of this scandal was a series of cases that Langford had overseen, cases involving corporate executives, politicians, and even members of organized crime. In each case, Langford's rulings were mysteriously in favor of the wealthy and powerful, while the victims seemed to get the short end of the stick. It wasn't just the public who noticed. Lawyers and legal experts had started raising concerns, but no one dared to confront the judge head-on. No one except Pam Bondi. Bondi had made a name for herself as a fierce prosecutor, and when she got wind of these allegations, she knew she couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The challenge was immense. Confronting a sitting judge was no small feat, especially when that judge had so many powerful friends. But Bondi wasn't one to back down, especially when justice was on the line. She began gathering evidence, speaking with witnesses, and building a case against Langford that would expose him for what he truly was. Pam Bondi's career had always been marked by a desire to bring criminals to justice, regardless of their status or influence. Throughout her time as Florida's Attorney General, she had taken on corruption in all its forms, from public officials to powerful businessmen. Her tenure was filled with high-profile cases where she fought for the rights of ordinary people against the interests of the elite. Bondi wasn't just a politician, she was a warrior for the law. But this case was different. This wasn't a criminal on the streets. This was a man who had sworn an oath to uphold justice. A man who had used his position to bend the law to his will, hurting people in the process. Bondi had seen firsthand the damage that corrupt judges could do, and she knew she had to act. As she prepared for the showdown, Bondi dove deep into the legal precedents that could help her build her case. She knew that confronting a judge in a courtroom would be a delicate matter. The judicial system had strict rules and traditions, and anyone challenging a judge needed to be on solid ground. Bondi wasn't just fighting for her own reputation. She was fighting for the integrity of the entire legal system. If Langford was allowed to continue, it would send a message that no one, no matter how corrupt, was above the law. Bondi's motivation for exposing Langford was not just about him. It was about making sure that no one else could abuse the system in the way he had. She had spent years fighting for the powerless, and this case represented everything she had stood for in her career. But as the day of the trial approached, she knew the risks were high. Exposing a corrupt judge could lead to personal and professional repercussions. But Bondi wasn't afraid. She was determined to see this through to the end. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with anticipation as everyone waited for the proceedings to begin. Pam Bondi stood at the front, her posture confident, her eyes focused. Across from her sat Judge Langford, a man who had been untouchable for so long. The room was silent as Bondi took a deep breath and began her opening statement. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She dove straight into the heart of the matter. She spoke about the pattern of corrupt rulings, the money changing hands, the people who had been wronged, and the weight of the system that had turned a blind eye to Langford's actions. As she spoke, she presented evidence, documents, testimonies, and even video footage that implicated Langford in taking bribes from corporate executives in exchange for favorable rulings. The tension in the room mounted with every word she said. Judge Langford's face went pale as the evidence mounted against him. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. The crowd was in shock, but no one dared to speak. Pam Bondi's voice rang out, each word cutting through the silence like a sword. She painted a picture of a man who had betrayed his oath, a man who had used his position to further his own interests, a man who had hurt countless people for the sake of wealth and power. The climax came when Bondi presented a final piece of evidence, a recording of a phone conversation between Langford and a known criminal. In the recording, Langford could be heard discussing the details of a case, instructing the criminal on how to manipulate the legal proceedings in their favor. The courtroom was stunned into silence. No one could deny it any longer. Langford's corruption had been exposed beyond a shadow of a doubt. And then, just as the weight of the moment settled over the room, the door to the courtroom opened. 2 police officers walked in, their presence undeniable. The judge looked up, his eyes wide with fear as the officers approached him. The room was in chaos. Pam Bondi stepped aside as the officers moved in to arrest Judge Langford. His hands were quickly shackled, and he was led away in front of a stunned crowd. The justice system had worked. For the first time in years, a corrupt judge had been held accountable. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence as Judge Langford was escorted away in handcuffs. It was a moment that would go down in history as a victory for justice and accountability. Pam Bondi had faced a monumental challenge, one that many thought was impossible, but she had succeeded. She had exposed a corrupt judge and had shown the world that no one, not even those who sit on the bench, is above the law. This case wasn't just about one corrupt judge. It was about sending a message. It was about showing that the legal system could be trusted again, that justice would prevail, and that corruption would no longer go unchecked. The implications of this event would ripple through the legal community for years to come. For Pam Bondi, this was more than just a professional victory. It was personal. She had dedicated her life to fighting for justice, And today, she had delivered on that promise. The community had been watching, and now they knew that when it came to corruption, no one was safe, not even the most powerful in the system. As the courtroom began to clear, Pam Bondi stood there watching the doors close. Behind the man who had once been untouchable, it was a quiet victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Justice had been served. What are your thoughts on this dramatic turn of events? Do you think Pam Bondi's actions will inspire others to take a stand against corruption in the judicial system? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out our other videos on high-stakes legal battles and stories of justice being served.